Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are back with the TATM podcast. That is the Anarchist Transmission podcast. And we have been on hiatus for a long time, mostly because I have been having some trouble with some finances. Regardless, we are back. I'm going to try to get everything taken care of and do this through the end of the election. I'm going to try. We'll see how things go. Regardless, we've got an interesting one today. Today is all about Pirates, Tyrants, and SCOTUS Appeals. And if anyone does not understand where that's coming from, it's a play on words from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, a famous 1980s John Candy movie. With that being said, we are going to go ahead and start introducing the co-hosts. I'm going to go ahead and start with our lovely goth Miss Keck. Please say hello.
Hello. It's been a while.
And then, of course, my trusty co-host from the Great White North, our dirty Frenchy Frenchman, that stinking Kanukistani from the Soviet state of Kanukistan. We've got Dale. Please say hello, Dale.
Guten Tag, ladies and gentlemen. As
Okay,
always,
you're
I
French,
come
not
to you
German.
Live. Yeah, I come to you live from the icy wastes of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Welcome to the show.
And then, of course, our friend from the South living in South Carolina, formerly of Alabama, we've got Stoner.
Hello, everybody, and thank God for power.
Yeah, so, the first hurricane of this season was not too nice to Stoner and his girlfriend because they were without power for, what was it, a week and a couple days?
Week and a day.
Week and a day. Interesting.
Yeah, and if you're curious, I did post pictures if anybody wants to take a look at the storm damage down here.
Yeah. Thankfully, it was not terrible like some of the people in Western North Carolina had it, but still wasn't good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
What
they had it worse.
Western North Carolina got slammed.
Yeah. Like, there were towns there that just no longer exist anymore. It was bad.
Well, it's the same for the eastern side of Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, what really got North Carolina was all the flooding.
Mm-hmm. So before we start, everyone's take on the Pirates, Tyrants, and SCOTUS Appeals. What do you all think of the naming?
I approve of any pun. Just for the record.
All I can say is that in regards to the pirates, if buying isn't owning, then piracy is not stealing.
Amen. Correct.
Well, we're generally talking about road pirates, aka cops.
Oh, I thought when you said road pirates, I thought you were referring to like porch pirates.
No, not at all. Road pirates, cops, the part of the executive branch where they can legally steal from you in most states.
I'm a sucker for a good pun, so I'm down for that.
Okay, so first up, we've got Texas Road Pirates. And let's go ahead and go to the YouTube feed. We've got road pirates out of Texas, and what is the one drug that cops need the most to survive?
IDs.
Bingo. Can anyone name the law in Texas that makes it fairly impossible for cops to get an ID during a Terry stop.
It's a specific Texas law.
Oh yeah,
I
Texas
actually did not
Penal
know that.
Code.
I'm ignorant
it's-
on the subject, so forgive
Hey.
me.
It's Texas Penal Code 3802. And it basically
and what does
says
Texas Penal Code 3802 say?
it basically says during a detention you cannot give a false identity. But the only time that you can be compelled to give identification during a detention outside of operating a motor vehicle when being lawfully stopped is when you're arrested. So the only time during a Terry stop that you are legally required to give ID is if they've arrested you.
Good to know. Texas has
So-
a surprisingly based law on IDs.
Yes, this specific video is surrounding a man who left his dog in the car. Before he shut off the car, it was freezing in the car. Locked the dog in the car. Walked into Walmart, was in Walmart for 15 minutes. Now, this is also at night. So there is no sun radiating to heat up the car.
When you say freezing, like what temperature? Because when I think of Texas, I don't generally think of like cold. I think of
Yes,
too
Oh,
I'm-
it can get
I'm-
pretty cold in the south.
Well, no,
Right.
we're talking about inside the car. He got the car freezing inside. And as you'll see, the female cop that starts this encounter keeps talking about how it's 95 degrees outside. It's also fucking nighttime. There is no heat to radiate onto or into the car because there's no fucking sun.
So the man had the air conditioning turned on in the car.
He had it turned on, but he turned off the car and went inside.
Oh.
But in 15 minutes after running for at least 10, you're not going to cool off or you're not going to warm up the inside of a car that fucking fast.
Oh.
So we'll start the video and we'll stop it intermittently.
On the night of June 28, 2023, a man parked his car in a Walmart parking lot, ran the air conditioning to cool the cabin down, rolled up the windows and left his dog in the car for 16 minutes while he was shopping. When he returned with a single plastic bag in his hands, he was met by Officer Haley Holbert of the Crossroads, Texas Police Department. Officer Holbert insisted the man identify himself despite the fact no crime.
Now this looks like a gray pity. And mind you, she was laying down. She did not look like she was in distress. So obviously
I'm
she's still
that,
cool.
like a kind stranger just saw that there was a dog in the car and, called police because,
Yeah,
he or she didn't know.
which is, listen, it is completely fine to call. If it's hot outside and there's a dog in the car, that is not a problem with me.
Yeah.
Crime had been committed and he was not under arrest. After the officer persisted on getting the man to identify himself, the man asked
Okay,
for a supervisor.
it's a male dog.
Sergeant Chris Tyler would arrive and together the officers demanded the man identify himself despite the man providing them with the statutory proof that he was not required to do so.
Is this your car? Yeah. Okay. I was this close to breaking the window out. It's 95 degrees. It means it's over 100 inside the vehicle. I've been in there. Window.
That means it's over 100 degrees inside the car. If the car has been sitting for over an hour and the sun is out. Yes, absolutely. but the sun isn't out. There is no heat radiating from the sun. And as you can see, it's 10:30 at night in Texas.
Well, I mean, what do you expect? Can you really expect a person to think for themselves?
No, I can't expect them to think for themselves.
So far, I'm torn on this. I'm sorry. It just seems so far that, like, I haven't seen this video before, so it seems like the cop so far is just, again, trying to do her job and protect an innocent animal because somebody thought that a dog was in distress.
Absolutely, but we're going to get into him explaining what's going on.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine. It at this point, it's still absolutely fine to side with the officer simply because, yeah, there was a call. The officer didn't know for certain if the dog was in distress. Didn't see the owner around. At that point, it still would have possibly been reasonable to break in the window. But she didn't. And now things are going to go downhill fast, and you're going to dislike the cop again.
Those have to be cracked. There's got to be something.
I was trying to keep the air conditioning in for him because I'm literally.
Okay, go to open that door for the and crack the windows open for the dog, and I'm use your driver's license, please.
There it is. I need to see your driver's license. There's where things get shitty. And this is only about 13 seconds into the encounter.
428, I'm out with the vehicle owner. Hey, okay, hey.
You can feel it's not.
It's 95 degrees.
If it's inside,
it means
the AC. And trust me, I love my dog.
The car isn't running.
So, as the narrator is going to say, he's offering to let the officer feel inside the car. The car is still cold inside.
Offers the officer a chance to feel the cooler air in the cabin of the vehicle, but she only focuses on the 95-degree temperature outside the vehicle.
I take him with me everywhere.
Okay, I just need to see the driver's license.
I don't have one with me.
Do I have any ID with you?
No.
You know your driver's license number?
What did I do wrong?
This is a criminal offense, okay?
What is a criminal offense?
For animal neglect and abuse, yes.
No.
You haven't confirmed that it's animal neglect and abuse. You only know that a dog was left in the car. He's offering to let you find out and investigate, but you're refusing and instead going straight to trying to get ID. Stop trying to get your fucking ID fix.
I'm butting in again.
Yes.
I didn't know the cop was a female. I don't know, maybe this is sexism or just holding women accountable for doing dumb shit, but I have
women are the worst cops.
Yeah, I really have a bone to pick with female cops, and I don't think that there should be a lot of female police officers. I do
right
believe
now,
that excuse me, I'm talking. Like I said, I don't believe that female cops should be or should outnumber their male peers within the profession. Profession, air quotes, using that word lightly. But I do believe that there is a time and a place for a female cop. Like if there's a child in need during a call, then a female cop is perfect. If there's a domestic violence situation and there's a woman being battered, I think a female cop, to a degree, can be helpful. Other than those two situations, not really. Because I've noticed a lot of female cops, the second that they put on that badge and they go out there into the world, they have this high and mighty mentality, and I think it comes from a place of dealing with probably misogyny and sexism while growing up, and you know, you're in a place of power, and so like women, we are the naturally we are the weaker sex, so like I can't blame a woman for feeling empowered when she's in a place of power, but at the same time, with being in a place of power comes a whole lot of responsibility, and this bitch is not being responsible with her power. Anyways, I'll shut up.
Don't
No,
forget,
you're-
they're also much less likely to quote unquote reach for their taser and then shoot someone with a gun and kill them. You know, and
Oh.
this person he's already lucky he has not been shot by a woman cop.
Yes.
Just right now.
Yeah, they're really trigger happy too. I forgot to mention that.
Yep.
Okay, let's continue.
No, I do not abuse and neglect my animal.
Okay.
I need a supervisor.
Okay.
No.
Driver's license.
I need a supervisor, please.
What is your driver's license?
Please, I need a supervisor.
I don't have one on duty right now.
Look, I respect officers. I have family that are officers, but I also respect the Constitution.
Go and crack your windows and then close your door.
Crack windows, you said?
Yep.
Mind you, now that the door has been opened and the windows are cracked and are going to remain cracked for the entirety of this encounter,
Yep, you're letting all the cool air out.
you're
and the
letting
fire
all the
in.
cool air out and all the warm air in. Like, you stupid fucking woman.
Yes.
God damn it.
It's not only just the stupidity of a cop, it's the stupidity of a cop plus the stupidity of a woman.
As a woman, I don't claim her ass disrespectfully.
No one blames you, Keck. No one.
Did I mention that I hate women for the most part? I'm kidding.
Okay, so
I don't
let's
actually hate women.
skip ahead a little bit. This is a few minutes later in the encounter.
Okay. Okay, all right.
So she's getting her supervisor, who's not on duty, to come
Supervisor's turning
talk
back
to
around
him.
and he's gonna come out.
I would never do. I would just, it's not.
This is some of the worst
Yeah, but it's not
temps. It's 95 degrees
Right, but it's not
outside.
sunny.
That
That's why I
doesn't
was
matter.
keeping the air
It's
conditioner. If I cracked the windows, that would let the 95-degree air in. I literally had it freezing cold in there before I shut the car.
I'm responding out to a call, okay?
Sure, I understand.
And this is me responding. I'm not telling you you're a bag dog, a dog owner, or anything
Right.
like that.
Well, yeah,
I'm
Yeah,
here
yeah,
because
you
I
are.
still have to do my job. I have to identify you now, okay? Because I'm
No,
out
you
here
don't.
for an
Do not.
offense.
No.
Okay.
That's not
All
the
right.
law.
Okay. Well, I'll let
Are you going to issue him a citation? Have you confirmed there was a criminal offense? No? Then you don't get his ID.
you talk to the supervisor when he gets out here.
Hello?
Is this a legit tag?
Yeah. I bought the car at auction, so I'm assuming it is.
All right. They weren't able to get a return on it.
460 traffic.
Purchasers.
Arrowhead and Broken Arrow on Sam, Robert, John.
Oh, let's see if I can find... Oh, here it is. Here's the supervisor.
And, I mean, what did I do wrong?
Okay, so when we get a call for service,
Uh-huh.
okay, and especially when we do contact somebody, we do need to identify the
That's
person.
not the law.
Hang on, I'm not done. Let me finish speaking, okay?
Sure.
Now, we don't know you had your car at sub-zero degrees earlier today.
Sure.
We have no idea.
Right.
But somebody did call and say, hey, there's an animal left in the vehicle. It is hot outside. And the animal looks like it's in distress.
Right. And you came here, investigated, and figured in distress.
Right.
I don't know about that. But you came here, investigated,
That's
and realized.
That's what's relayed to
That's
us.
what,
Yes.
that's what relates to us.
Right.
However,
Anybody can say anything. You
Sure,
came here.
sure.
I mean, the dog
So
was
now,
everywhere. I love that dog. I'm not gonna.
Totally understand. We love dogs. I got a dog too. I love my dog as well. So when an officer does contact someone, they're required, especially when we believe that there could be a criminal offense, to identify.
82.03, I think it is.
Obviously, he transposed the numbers in his head. He's not as well versed. Doesn't change the facts. 3802, Texas Penal Code 3802, says you cannot compel a person to identify themselves unless you're arresting them.
You could ask for my identification. I don't have to get it unless I've been lawfully arrested. That's the only time.
No, sir, that's not true.
Look it up. Look it up. That's all I'm asking. Look it up.
Okay,
Look up
you're being
82.
lawfully detained because there is an animal in the vehicle. We got a call for service.
The windows are down now.
The windows are down now.
Okay, and I'm gonna skip ahead further in the video, but this detention is extended not by this man not wanting to give ID, but by these officers thinking that they need to get their ID fix.
Mm.
Okay, so here in the video, he's going to show the supervisor statute or Texas Penal Code 3802.
Address or date of birth of a police officer who has lawfully arrested the person.
They see that.
The police officer who has lawfully arrested the person. Okay. Request. I will. Request you can be expressed. Person commits an offense if he intentionally gives a false name. It's a false or fictitious name. I can't do that. Name, residence, address, or day of birth to an police officer who has A, lawfully arrested the person, B, to lawfully detain the person. Now, this is only if I cannot give a fictitious name. This is, watch, go back. I do not have to show my ID. Watch.
So yes, Texas Penal Code 3802, you cannot be compelled to give ID if you are not under arrest. But if you are detained and you give a fictitious ID, then it is a violation of the ID statute.
Correct.
A person commits a crime.
Mind you, look at how long this video is.
It
Nearly
goes on
40 minutes.
Jesus.
So 36 minutes. They extended that detention all the way from 10:30 to 11 o'clock at night. I would argue that these officers are the ones endangering the animal because now it's fucking hot outside. And now it's hot inside the car.
Do they eventually let him go, or does he how does this end? Does he eventually give in, or do they give up?
Okay, so here's where they're giving up. The supervisor and the officer are about to talk with each other.
Stand right there.
Sure. And wonder if she turns her body camera.
We can't do that. But is it prudent to do that? So here's a cut list, and we know that's what he's doing.
What if that trooper had done that to Timothy McVeigh? But whatever.
I agree. I agree. However,
Why is she bringing up Timothy McVeigh unless she actually believes that this guy is abusing his dog? So obviously,
Timothy McVeigh.
Timothy McVeigh
was the guy who blew up the Oklahoma City IRS office or whatever. He was the guy who did the Oklahoma City bombing.
he
Okay,
was
so
also
how does he connect to this?
And he also did nothing wrong.
He
But
was
still, how does he connect to this?
But before the bombing, he was encountered by police because there were accusations of animal abuse, and the trooper that had encountered him on the animal abuse aspect didn't do anything to Timothy McVeigh. And
But
so
did he actually abuse his animal?
I believe so, yeah.
Mm.
So she's basically accusing this guy of being abusive to animals and being a possible future terrorist.
Oh, fun.
So
I said it before, and I'll say it again. This is why I hate cops.
yeah, me too. So regardless, you know, that's the whole drug thing for officers. They you know, they may not do physical drugs like cocaine or meth or marijuana, but they still get their fix by asking for ID.
Correct.
And in most states, it's very hard to prove that they don't have reasonable articulable suspicion, which is why Texas put Penal Code 3802 into their book, because they were getting tired of cops manufacturing reasonable articulable suspicion after the fact. So they let him go at like 11 o'clock at night, which is fucking... This in and of itself, because they didn't do any investigating afterwards, proves just in and of itself that this was an illegally extended detention. They initially had reasonable articulable suspicion to detain him. By 5 minutes in, they didn't. And so, for 25 minutes, they illegally detained him.
Correct.
It's fucking bullshit. Okay. So that's Road Pirate video number 1.
Oh, there are more road pirate videos.
Oh yeah, there are more Road Pirate videos. This is the next one. So this is the Perry County, Indiana Sheriff, Alan Malone. And we're not talking about a deputy. We're talking about the actual elected sheriff for Perry County.
Well. That's really nice. That is just a great thing to put out here.
You know what's really nice is being shoved out of the sheriff's office?
Nobody shoved you. I'm going to tell you one thing. I would suggest, because you're probably way outnumbered here. Okay?
Whaley.
You can keep running your mouth, but we have little kids here, and I'm going to ask you as a sheriff of this county to take that down, because we have children out here.
Oh, we have children out here. Take it down. Take it down. You can't have a visible sign that has profanity around children.
What did the sign say?
Probably fuck the police.
Oh, won't somebody think of the children? The children in question being the police, of course.
So can you please put that down? Please. I'm asking you please to put it down, because I have kids out here. Do you understand what I'm asking you?
You understand it's a First Amendment right?
I don't care about your First Amendment right now. I will tell you right now.
I don't care about your First Amendment right now. Well, you should, because the First Amendment is, you know, one of those inalienable rights that everyone has at all times.
It seems like a good statement for his deposition.
Now, and and I don't care what you put on YouTube, but we have children here, and you're seeing this. So I can promise you can tell California that I don't give a shit.
It's United States Supreme Court case law. You should know this.
Hey, here's what I'm going to do.
Alan, walk away.
No.
I love you, buddy. It's not working.
Now, the reason why I say it probably said something like "fuck the police" specifically because the person shooting the video brought up Cohen v. California, which is a famous case from, I believe, 1976, where someone actually had a sign in public that said "fuck the police," and he was arrested for it under public indecency laws.
1971, actually.
1971, thank you.
And he actually, he had a jacket that said "fuck the draft."
Okay, fuck the draft. He got arrested for the fuck in the phrase.
Well, given the history of the Vietnam War, can't say I blame him.
No. I don't think any of us can blame Cohen. But it did go to the Supreme Court, was ruled the arrest was ruled unconstitutional, and so at any time if you see someone claiming, "Oh, well, we've got children here," doesn't fucking matter. The government made it clear in 1971, or the SCOTUS made it clear in 1971. Profane language is not enough.
I got you. Let me alone. Don't get in trouble. I'm going to ask you one more time. Will you take that down? I'm going to ask you one more time. Will you take that down?
Is it under threat of arrest?
I'm asking you one more time. Will you take it down? That's why I don't care to argue. But you are not going to. I got little kids down here.
You're acting in a very threatening manner, and it's not professional.
No, he didn't make the threat of arrest because he knows that he can't. Because if he does, he violates Cohen v. California. Okay, next up, we have a YouTube short. Let me get this.
That's interesting. I think this may be the first short we've played on the show.
No, it's not the first short that we've played on the show, but it is one of the more important ones. I need to get a doc open. Give me a second. Sources. Okay. So, I posted a video. It will be played after this, but in the server, someone else had posted about an officer wearing a hat with sunglasses on him in court. This is that case. A black man who is deaf and has cerebral palsy in Phoenix, Arizona, coming out of a convenience store across the street from a Circle K. Or no, coming out of Dollar General, I think it was. Across the street from Circle K, got attacked by 2 police officers from the Phoenix PD. Okay, so you can see that the two police vehicles. One's a pickup and one is an SUV. They're pulling in. Right now, the deaf man walks out, and you saw him juke to the right because he had just noticed that the officer was pulling into his path. He can't hear shit. And this officer just comes straight out and attacks him. 3 seconds. Now, I'm not going to play the body cam video because it is extremely graphic. It is part of the next video. But to sum it up, the officer that is currently on top pulls out his taser after already punching this man 10 times in the face, breaking his finger, and discharges his taser all 4 times. Now, how many charges are on a taser?
4,
How
I'm
many?
guessing?
Yeah, you can only discharge one taser 4 times before it has to be recharged. And we are not talking short discharges. We are talking full-on, full discharge. It times out each time. Okay, so here he goes. First time with the taser. Second time with the taser. Third time with the taser. And fourth time with the taser.
What the world's the matter with these people? Can't they tell that if somebody has... Okay, one, if somebody has cerebral palsy, can't you usually tell that by looking at them?
Yeah.
And if someone that has cerebral palsy, I seriously doubt they're in any position to beat up anyone.
Well, and when you the video that I'm about to play does have the body cam video, and you can tell that when he puts his hands up, the officer tries to construe that in court as him bringing his fists up to fight, but obviously with cerebral palsy, he can't get his arms all the way up. And so you can see his hands are limp, his arms are up. He was obviously surrendering to the officer until the officer started fucking punching him. The second that he got out of the fucking pickup. And that is for you guys to watch that portion of this video on your own. But we are going to go ahead and open up that video. No, that's not the right video. Let's see. There it is. Here is the video.
But first at 6,
and we'll get that up.
So, what was this person actually? What did they think he did?
So they're gonna go over this in the video, but basically at the Circle K there was a call for service. They wanted a man inside trespassed because he was being extremely disorderly. And when the cops trespassed the dude, he said, "Oh, well, I'm being disorderly because I was assaulted by that black guy in the Dollar General over there." Bullshit.
Right, so-
NAACP, ACLU.
Go ahead.
So, how does being assaulted by someone then make you act disorderly?
It doesn't.
Exactly.
And obviously, if the cops were called by the people running Circle K at the time, and the only person identified by Circle K was the white dude that claims that the black dude assaulted him, the white dude's fucking lying through his goddamn teeth.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Several disability rights organizations and multiple state leaders are all demanding action because of an ABC 15 investigation.
We exposed the video showing 2 Phoenix police officers immediately going after a deaf man with cerebral palsy, then repeatedly punching and tasering that man. Tonight, our investigation into this case continues.
You'll hear directly from the 2 main officers involved, but before we get to that, We again want to show body camera footage of this full incident, so consider this a warning. The video lasts about a minute. It is violent and it is difficult to watch.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause there, and I'm gonna get through. I'm gonna go straight to the court.
I really hate how they put trigger warnings nowadays before showing any footage of like an attack happening.
Agreed.
That's why they don't get sued.
Oh,
Who's gonna get sued? Like,
Well,
ooh,
it's
your content offended hurt me so much because I watched it and I couldn't.
crime happened in
Yeah.
town and we're showing it to you, but
I-
don't
I-
sue us for doing our job.
I was so hurt emotionally I couldn't even turn it off and stop
I was
watching it or look
so
away.
hurt to know that crime occurs sometimes, and that's just life.
while I understand people's frustration with trigger warnings, this is something that's been going on in the news media for decades, specifically around extremely graphic videos, because
Like, I get it from a professional standpoint, like you want to be respectful when showing footage.
yeah. Well, and it's because, you know, who watches the news? Old people.
True.
Adults. And adults obviously often have their kids around the TV while they're watching the news. They don't want their kids seeing this, and so they give that
Take
warning.
your fucking kids away from the TV. Maybe be responsible for your children.
Agreed.
Yeah,
the
well,
nightly
and
news is not
that's
something small children should watch.
I mean,
well,
unless you were me growing up, my parents didn't give a shit.
neither did mine. Mine put on the news every night at 5 o'clock. Okay, so that's the whole trigger warning thing. I'm not showing the body cam video. We're gonna go straight to the court the court hearing, which I think the judge fucked up.
We already established that when you pulled into the parking lot and yelled at Tyrone, he didn't respond to you, correct?
Correct.
Did you check to see if he had headphones in?
I didn't notice.
Okay. Did you check to see if there was a reason why he couldn't hear you?
No.
Did you try to wave him down?
No.
During your initial interaction with Tyrone, you wrote that Tyrone raised his hands. Can you describe what that looked like?
Yeah, he raised them in a manner that appeared to me he was going to use them to punch me.
So he raised his...
Okay, let's go back in the video, because they're gonna show it.
Like.
Yeah, he raised them in a manner that appeared to me he was...
Yeah, like that's really putting your fists up to fight.
Yeah.
Going to use them to punch me.
So he raised his hands like this?
No.
Can you demonstrate again, please?
Yeah, he raised them in a manner that appeared to be ready to strike me. So what that communicated to me is I was about to get assaulted, not that someone was giving up.
Now, is it possible that Tyrone raised his hand to protect himself from your punches?
That's not what his body language communicated to me.
Yes, it is. Now, mind you, this is Phoenix PD. What else has been going on in Phoenix recently?
I don't know.
The Fed, the Department of Justice, wants to take over the Phoenix Police Department because there has been an established practice of excessive force in Phoenix police operations.
I'm asking you if it's possible. Are you saying it's not possible?
I don't know if it's possible. So just underneath my ring finger at that...
If you've noticed the cast on Officer Harris's hand, it's because he broke his finger arresting Tyrone. And at the end of his testimony, the prosecutor asked Officer Harris how all of this could have been avoided.
The defendant had just put his hands down or said, I can't hear, or I need to write, or something like that. What would you have done?
I would have had him sit down, made...
Yeah, but in 3 seconds, from the time you pulling up to the time you get out of the car, there is no time for him to recognize that you want to talk to him and for him to do anything to signal to you that, hey, I'm deaf, I can't communicate
For the record, I'm sure
verbally.
they're not trained to know ASL.
No,
or
but his
basic
girlfriend
ASL.
was. His girlfriend was trained to know. His girlfriend signs ASL, and she later, after they had gotten the cuffs on him, he's recording them, and she's telling them all of this stuff. He's deaf. He has cerebral palsy, and she's trying to let them, or she's trying to get them to let her communicate to him for them, and instead they threaten her with arrest.
So is this trial a trial of the officer, or is it a trial of the victim?
This is a probable cause hearing of the victim, the black man. Because you'll see in just a couple minutes that the judge finds that there was probable cause, which there wasn't. Which means I have zero faith in the Phoenix Police Department, the Phoenix DA, and the judges in Phoenix.
Motions with my hands to have him sit down, and then I would have gotten a pen.
You wouldn't have
paper and pen out for him.
You wouldn't have punched him in the head and knocked him to the ground and tasered him?
No.
Now, let's get to the testimony from Officer Sue.
As I was...
This is the one wearing the hat with the sunglasses.
I looked over and observed the defendant actively swing at Officer Harris, and then as I was putting my car in a park, and I jumped out and ran over there.
Sue's body camera fell off, but during the arrest, he testified that Tyrone bit his hand.
Can you hold up your hand high so we can see, show the judge exactly, point where it was that he bit you?
Right there.
Okay.
There's no body camera footage that shows the bite. And here's what happened when Tyrone's attorneys asked the officer to go through the video.
Anywhere in there? Nope.
And stop at the moment when he says Tyrone bit him.
Right there.
The moment Officer Sue pinpointed is when the other officer's camera pans up and you can't see Tyrone. The defense asked Sue if it was possible that he cut or scraped his hand on Tyrone's mouth or the ground while choking him. But Officer Sue said no and denied using a chokehold.
Is that your arm there, directly around his throat?
The one on the bottom?
Yes.
That's my arm.
Okay. And that is around Tyrone's throat, correct?
Looks too hard to tell.
So how is this not a chokehold?
When I think of a chokehold, I think of two arms from...
A chokehold does not need to be two arms, you fucking idiot.
I love how he says it's too hard to tell.
The same person.
In a bizarre moment, the prosecution then got back up to prove Tyrone bit the officer, first showing pictures, then asking for a demonstration.
Would you open up your mouth and stick your wrist in your mouth?
Say again?
Could you open your mouth and stick your wrist in your mouth? And then pull it out to the side? Did you just cut your arm?
Objection, Your Honor. This is extremely speculative and really doesn't...
Overruled. I just watched him do it. That's not speculation. He's demonstrating.
Officer, did you just cut your arm when you did that?
I did not.
At this time, I do believe the state has presented sufficient evidence to establish.
In the end, the judge found there was probable cause for the criminal case to move forward against Tyrone. The judge didn't give an explanation, but the ruling means Tyrone still faces felony charges of aggravated assault and resisting arrest.
An arrest cannot be legal if there was not probable cause to begin with. There was no probable cause to begin with. There wasn't even reasonable articulable suspicion to begin with. You can't resist something when you don't know what's going on. He didn't know he was being arrested for assaulting a person across the street. He didn't know he was being detained for assaulting someone across the street. He didn't even know for certain that these were two legitimate police officers. He's deaf. They made no effort in trying to identify themselves to him. They made no effort in trying to communicate with him. They just jumped out of their fucking cars and started attacking him.
Yep.
There is no fucking probable cause. I have zero faith in that judge. I have zero faith in the DA. I have zero faith in Phoenix PD. None whatsoever. And it's really hard for me to entertain the idea of the DOJ taking over a local police department, but by God, here I am doing it.
Well, they kind of asked for it with the way they've been acting and stuff.
McAlpin, this will conclude today's hearing. I'll have you stepped over to my bailiff just to sign for those release conditions, but good luck to you moving forward in your case.
Again, Phoenix is not commenting on the arrest because they say it's under investigation. But this case is a sensitive one. We've learned the DOJ is now aware of the case. And it's important to remember that the arrest happened after the DOJ released its historic investigation into Phoenix PD. And the feds say they want to put the department under federal oversight. I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15, Arizona.
Dave's investigation will continue next week. We're going to have reaction from and demands from the NAACP, ACLU, and leading disability rights organizations.
If you would like to catch up on our coverage, we've got Dave's first report, body camera video, surveillance footage, police reports, and the courtroom testimony. It is all at the top of abc15.com/investigators.
Okay, so that transitions me into our next video. We're going to the small town of Surprise, Arizona.
That's a surprise.
Surprise?
Yes, it's quite literally named Surprise.
That's kind of cute.
So this is a city council meeting with Mayor Skip Hall, in which there is only one person who has signed up to speak in front of the city council. And the topic she wants to speak on is the recent raise that they want to give to the city attorney, who makes he is one of the he is the 11th highest paid public servant in the state, and is only paid $10,000 less than the city attorney for Phoenix, which has 100,000 people more than Surprise.
What is his total pay? Like, how much is he making?
Over 200,000.
Oh, damn.
The call to the public?
Would you call the public?
Yeah.
Okay. We had Miss Massey wanted to do the call to public to recover the city Surprise's loss of long-term storage credits and any damages related thereto from water stored in the Maricopa Water District's groundwater savings facility.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As we discussed earlier, I have noticed an accompanying e-session for this item to receive legal advice. So if you want to receive legal advice, I would request you vote to recess into e-session.
Okay.
After which I would ask you to come out, take any action you deem appropriate on this matter.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, so this is pretty much the beginning of the session. And there have been no public speakers yet, but the one speaker that is coming out is the only one they're going to have before they go into quote-unquote e-session to ask for legal advice from the city attorney. Now, I want to bring up a court case. Give me a second here.
What do they need legal advice for?
That I don't know, and it has no bearing on what's about to happen. Let's see. So, in a city council meeting, they can impose some quote-unquote reasonable restrictions on the content of speech. It is a limited public forum, which means the city council can decide beforehand who speaks. The government cannot restrict the speech based on a speaker's opinion, but they can cut off a speaker if they stray from the topic.
I don't really like the sound of that.
Well, the point is that she didn't stray from the topic. Their issue with her is that she's going to criticize the city attorney.
Well, the only time that people get cut off usually is whenever the city council hears something they don't like.
Yeah. But for the most part, the city council has to have content neutral restrictions. So they cannot say that you can't criticize the government because, you know, city council meetings, legislative hearings, those are where normal citizens are asked generally to air their grievances with the government, which is part of the First Amendment. We have a right to redress our grievances.
Correct.
Which also means that Cohen v. California comes into effect because they can't say, oh, well, just because you're swearing, you can't be up here. It's content neutral. I can get up and say fuck 100 goddamn times in my 3 minutes, and they cannot kick me off of that. Okay, so we will go back to the video.
Before we do that, I'd like to acknowledge the speaker who wanted to speak on item number 4, I believe. The call to the public.
What do you call the public?
Yeah.
Okay. We had Miss Massey wanted to do the call to the public.
Am I the only one?
Yeah.
So I'm going to take this time. I know you guys need to go into e-session, so out of respect for that. The item that I had requested to speak on earlier was during the consent agenda, item number 6, as it pertains to the contract of employment for the city attorney.
So do
I
I.
just noticed that. I love that. I need a
Cyberbully
shirt
the
like
government.
that.
Oh, you know and I know that this woman has been following along, and she takes part in the Fuck the ATF on Twitter with
She's
us.
very pretty too.
Oh yes, I love her hair.
I do too.
So I'm going to start this off with, in the contractual agreement with Mr. Robert Wingo, there is a stipulation that says he can renegotiate his pay rate for an exceptional job. Cambridge University defines exceptional as something that is much greater than usual, especially in skill, intelligence, quality, etc., i.e. what is not expected of somebody in a role. And I have concerns with allocating more funds to him specifically for a few different reasons. Point number 1 is, according to an article that was published in the Surprise Independent just shy of 12 months ago by Jason Stone, the city attorney is the second highest paid individual in the entirety of the City of Surprise employees. And at that time, he was listed at making about $266,000 annually. Where this becomes important is
This dude is making out like a bandit. $266,000 at the time that article was written. Wow.
Fucking money.
He is 11th overall in the entire state, and he actually only makes only $10,000. Again, at the time the article was printed, less than the attorney in Scottsdale, and Scottsdale has About
Okay,
100,000
Scottsdale,
people
not
larger
Phoenix.
than what Surprise covers. Recent months have uncovered numerous violations or alleged violations and blatant disregard, I would say, for not only the Arizona revised statutes, the state bar rules of professional conduct, but also the Arizona state constitution and the Bill of Rights at the federal level. Title 16, I won't rehash everything, but we are all too well and familiar with what took place during the election season and the violations thereof. City clerk is our elections officer. Nothing was done with the violations, and the city attorney did nothing as far as that. Title 9 and 38 have conflict of interest pieces of information, and it was deemed that there was a conflict of interest. Title 39, there are numerous public records requests that I have open right now that are, quote, pending legal review that I am entitled
Ms.
to
Massey,
request.
I've got to interrupt you here because.
Okay, are you going to stop the timer?
This is the public meeting forum that you agree to when you speak, and I want to read this to you, that there are oral communications during the city council meeting may not be used to lodge charges or complaints against any employee of the city or members of the body, regardless of whether such person is identified in the presentation by the name or by any other reference that tends to identify him or her.
That's all fine, well and good, but that's a violation of my First Amendment rights.
So that's.
And she's correct. It is a violation of the First Amendment. Let's see if I can pull up the legal. Okay, so the legal authority. The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution provides protection to and opportunity for free speech in public forums, which this is a quote-unquote limited public forum. The public meeting of a board or council is considered a limited public forum, which means the government can regulate the time, place, and manner of speech. Boards and councils regulate speech through the adoption of rules. When writing and establishing rules of conduct, the governing body must be careful not to violate the protections that meeting attendees enjoy under the First Amendment. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals addressed this issue in Acosta v. City of Costa Mesa. And I'll pull that up.
Hey, Erica, while you're pulling that up, I've come to the conclusion that the government, and by government, I mean politicians and their paid enforcers, police and military, if they all had their way, they'd just do away with the Constitution and rule over us with an iron fist.
Well, I completely agree. And considering that Surprise is a small town, which generally you would consider to be quote-unquote Republican territory, they would get it through their thick fucking skulls that you cannot violate people's rights. But again, we're dealing with government. And this is what I've been trying to get through to a lot of my friends. It doesn't matter what side of the coin you're in favor of. The government is the government, and they're gonna fuck with you no matter what. So, this case, Acosta versus Costa Mesa. The opinion makes it a misdemeanor for members of the public who speak at city council meetings to engage in disorderly, or the Costa Mesa Municipal Code makes it a misdemeanor for members of the public who speak at a city council meeting to engage in disorderly, insolent, or disruptive behavior. Benito Acosta was removed from the Costa Mesa City Council meeting for an alleged violation of the ordinance. Acosta appealed the district court's dismissal of his First Amendment facial challenge to the ordinance. He also appeals the district court's grant of partial summary judgment in favor of the California city and various individual police officers on his state law free speech claims and his Fourth Amendment claims. A jury returned a defense verdict on all remaining issues submitted for trial. He also appeals the district court's discretion decisions to admit certain evidence, refusal to give his proposed limiting instruction, denial of his renewed motion as a matter of law after the jury returned its verdict and the denial of declaratory relief. He claims that the ordinance is facially invalid and that it was enforced against him only because he expressed a view contrary to the mayor's. Let's get into the meat of it. Acosta turned to speak in opposition to the ICE agreement began about 50 minutes later. Approximately 2 minutes into his remarks, so he's at the fucking podium at the meeting. He's talking, he's giving his remarks. Acosta turned away from the council and toward the audience to ask members who agreed with his viewpoint to stand. The mayor interrupted him, saying, "No, we're not going to do that," in defiance of that order. Still facing the audience, Acosta nonetheless said, "Do it," 3 times. Approximately 20 to 30 people stood up in response to his urging, and some began clapping. Acosta then turned back to face the departing council in an attempt to complete his speech. As he did so, an officer approached him at the podium. Acosta testified that at first the officer told him his time was up and moved the microphone. The officers asked Acosta to step down from the podium and leave the chambers, but Acosta did not immediately comply. Instead, he repeatedly asked why his speaking time was cut short and why he was being asked to leave the podium. Chief Hensley approached the group and directed his officers to take Acosta out of the city chambers. The officers again tried to guide Acosta away from the podium, but Acosta attempted to prevent his removal by leaning away from the officers and planting his feet. The officers then took Acosta's arms. Acosta alleged that the officer behind him also wrapped his arm around Acosta's neck, similar to a chokehold, and that the officers kicked, dragged, and punched him while removing him. Acosta brought 11 claims against Mayor Mansour, Chief Hensley, and the city, and certain individual police officers. The claims relevant to this appeal include a First Amendment facial challenge to the city ordinance, a facial challenge to the city ordinance under the Free Speech Clause of the California Constitution, a request for declaration that the defendants enforced the city ordinance in an unconstitutional manner, a claim that he was unreasonably and unlawfully seized in violation of the Fourth Amendment, an as-applied challenge to the ordinance under the First Amendment, and an as-applied claim under the California Constitution that sought damages. So let's go ahead and get down to the decision of the Ninth Circuit. They're, as I'm going through this, they're going over claim by claim. So, claim 8. What was claim 8 again? Let's see. Claim 8. No, never mind.
And there is for the record, for those unaware, the Ninth Circuit is that awful circuit that keeps going against every SCOTUS gun ruling.
So
the California Circuit.
The Ninth Circuit Court has made some really good strides when it comes to certain individual rights, but they suck on the Second Amendment. The Ninth Circuit has passed down some of the most land-breaking decisions when it comes to free speech. At least at certain points in history, because obviously you have Cohen v. California, and that was a SCOTUS decision.
Right.
Which means that California ruled against him, or the Ninth Circuit ruled against him at the circuit level. So Section 8 of this opinion, the city ordinance is facially overbroad and therefore invalid. However, the offensive word insolent can be excised from the city ordinance, and the remainder of the ordinance is severable and operative. As to Acosta's remaining claims, we find no reversible error. The evidence amply supported the jury's verdict that Acosta caused an actual disruption of the city council meeting, reversed in part and affirmed in part. The parties will bear their own costs on appeal. Section 7, Acosta appeals the district court's denial of his request for a declaration that the defendants failed to apply the ordinance in a constitutional manner. The district court's decision to deny equitable relief is reviewed for an abuse of discretion. The Seventh Amendment provides that no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. In our circuit, it would be a violation of the Seventh Amendment right to jury trial for the court to disregard a jury's finding of fact. Thus, in a case where legal claims are tried by a jury and equitable claims are tried by a judge, and the claims are based on the same facts, in deciding the equitable claims, the Seventh Amendment requires the trial judge to follow the jury's implicit or explicit factual determination. Jury instructions number 14 and 15 specifically instructed the juries to assess liability against the mayor and the city upon finding that either or both deprived Acosta of his rights under the First Amendment. Instruction number 27 also stated that in enforcing the city ordinance, the mayor could bar a speaker from further audience only if the speaker's activity itself, and not the viewpoint of the activity's expression, substantially impaired the conduct of the meeting. The jury rendered a verdict for the defendants. As such, the jury necessarily found that Acosta caused an actual disturbance. Considering what's going on?
You stole the fan.
Correct.
Considering this factual finding, it would be incongruous to declare that the defendants enforced the ordinances in an unconstitutional manner. We affirm the district court's denial of equitable relief. So basically, this decision outlines what can and can't be done in a city council meeting. A person cannot turn around and cause a disturbance, even during their time. So they cannot talk to the audience and get the audience to stand up and clap. I personally don't buy that, because Acosta wasn't trying to get them to clap. He was just trying to get a consensus in the room as to where everyone in the room stood on a certain subject. That in and of itself does not qualify as a disturbance in my book. No. If individuals began to clap, that's on them. He didn't ask for a round of applause, he asked for a consensus. Still, Miss Massey does not do that. She does not turn around and ask for a consensus. She does not turn around and ask for a round of applause. She provided an offensive viewpoint to the mayor and to the city attorney, and they thusly ejected her for it, arrested her, and we're getting to that point.
Well, this is your warning, okay?
Warning for what?
A warning for attacking the city attorney personally.
This is all factual information.
It doesn't matter.
You're violating my First Amendment rights.
This is what you agreed to when you first speaking. This is the form.
It is unconstitutional, Mayor Hall.
Well, It's not unconstitutional.
It is.
And if you're
The Supreme Court has upheld. I could get up here and I could swear at you for 3 straight minutes, and it is protected speech by the Supreme Court. It is.
No, you can't.
Why don't you look at case law?
No, you can't.
I can.
So if you want to be
Also, the chair
do you
engaged
want
the
to be
debate, so
do you
point
want
of
to be
order.
escorted out of here? Do you want to be escorted out
You're
of here?
violating
or are you
my
gonna
First
stop
Amendment rights.
Talking.
You are violating my First Amendment rights.
That's your opinion.
No,
It's
that's
not a matter of
fact.
opinion.
Do you want to be escorted out, Miss Massey? Because that's what's going to happen. And it's going to happen in the future also. Anytime you attack
That's
any
why you changed the
staff member
rules.
Or any
That's why you
city-
changed the rules.
This has been on the back of this form.
I understand,
all the
Mayor
time.
Hall, but that is completely unconstitutional.
No, it's
You're
not.
also engaging in debate, and so you should actually be
Anyway,
yielding the floor to somebody else
okay,
managing.
Chief, could you have somebody come down here and escort Miss Massey out of
Really,
this
is that
chamber?
necessary?
Yes, I
In
think
front
it
of my
is.
10-year-old daughter, you're going to escort me
That's
out
fine.
for expressing my
She
First
can go
Amendment
with you.
rights.
She can go with you.
I'm not leaving.
Well,
I'm
Okay. So my first issue with this police officer, why is he touching the small of her back? Why is that his first action when he comes up to ask her to leave?
That could probably count as sexual assault. Maybe I'm pushing it.
I honestly don't think so. That in and of itself is the very definition of unwanted touching.
It could, like I said, it could count as like sexual assault because it's not wanted touch.
Well, and you don't.
Well,
so
I mean, just on that, like the police unwanted touch a lot of people generally when, like I guess detaining them. So I think that is a bit of a stretch to say that's sexual assault. I think he's just trying to like move her.
So there's a difference between just general unwanted touching when you're at someone's face, like you are face to face with them. He came up behind her.
Well,
and
I mean, he had to come up behind her because
and
there's a wall in front of her.
Yes, I understand that he had to come from behind her, but he didn't have to touch her to get her attention. He could have just come around to the side. The issue in and of itself comes from the specific place at which he touched. Heck, please correct me if I'm wrong, but a person touching the small of your back is generally something that you only want from a romantic partner. Yes or no?
Yeah. The reason why I argue that it could count as sexual assault is because the small of your back is usually a sexualized part of the body, if you see what I'm saying. We associate touching that part of the body with romantic touch. So, and of course, it's between a man and a woman, and a lot of men, wow, words are gay. There are men who, violate women in that way and like try to like rub it off as like, oh, I wasn't doing anything, blah fucking blah. Then again, maybe I'm stretching things. I don't know.
I mean, in the same, you could also say that like a shoulder is also a part that is often touched in a romantic way by a romantic partner. But like, if he grabbed her by the shoulder, that wouldn't be sexual assault.
Yes, but
the small of her back is also closer to her butt.
I mean, if he touched her butt or he grabbed her by the boob or like, yeah, that's. But it just seems more like, I guess. Maybe not the ideal place to move someone with your hand, but it
also depends on how she feels about being touched there.
All right. Well, I'm assuming the escorting out, she was gonna get, if she didn't move, she was gonna get touched and move. Like you can't move someone without touching them.
I'm not saying
that.
that's.
Like I think if I was trying to move someone, like, and again, I'm not saying this is constitutionally right to remove them, but like, if I was trying to remove someone from, I think either like, lower torso or shoulders are like the places you're gonna go. If you're like trying to move someone physically.
Forearm.
Better.
And I agree shoulders are better, but I think it's like the second place would be like small of like side, like lower to mid torso.
If
you can't grab them by the head, and well, I mean, if you grab them by the head, that's like manhandling them. That's kind of bad. You're not gonna grab. If you grab her by the chest, then you're groping her. I mean, it's kind of hard to grab the upper back, and grabbing the legs seems, but again, sexual assault, genital area sexual assault. And legs is just kind of impractical.
Stop for a second.
You're not going to grab someone by the leg.
Everybody shut up.
All autistic about this.
Everybody shut up for a second. The simple fact of the matter is, the touch was to get her attention. It was not to remove her.
Oh.
The touch was to let her know he was there. To let someone know that you're there in such a manner is something only for an intimate partner.
Oh, then
you should tap somebody on the shoulder maybe for that.
That's if the touch was only as a get their attention, then yes, it would be much more appropriate shoulder or like upper back than
he didn't
small upper back.
And the simple fact of the matter is, he didn't have to touch her in order to get her attention. He was coming around to her side. He didn't have to be right in front of her face for her to know that he was there. But he put his hand on the small of her back to get her attention. And that's my biggest issue at this point. Do not touch women there if you are not their intimate partner.
All right.
I mean, ask your wife. If someone came up, if someone came up to her, trying to get her attention, how do you think she'd feel if someone touched the small of her back?
Probably uncomfortable.
Exactly. And if someone touched you there, how would you feel?
I mean, I've been sexually assaulted. I know what it's like.
Yeah. I'd personally be more confused than uncomfortable, but I get you. I think it's fair to say it's wrong if it's for the purpose of just getting someone's attention. But I would argue that if it's for the purpose of forcefully moving someone, then it's probably the second best place to do so.
I don't buy it.
Well, where would be better that, like, we all agree shoulders are the best place, but where's the second best place? Because there's a lot of other uncomfortable...
Taking control of someone's body, forcing them out. Forearms. If you can control the biceps and the forearms, then yeah.
Sure. Well, I
or
mean,
you could just not touch them and come up beside them, or like address them as sir or ma'am to let them know that you're there.
Yeah. So forearms, I kind of disagree, because if you apply a lot of force in like a yanking manner to force someone to move, you can on their forearms. That's easy way to dislocate their shoulder.
Yes, but we've been taught ways for decades how to do it without dislocating shoulders. And yet I'm not saying cops are at all smart. I'm simply saying they should have the training necessary to do it safely without dislocating a person's shoulder. I know I can. Okay, we're about to get to her getting thrown out.
Expressing my fear. Do not touch me. Do not put your hands on me. Do not put your hands on me.
Come on out.
And there he goes, forearms.
Do not put your hands on me.
Come out with me now before you get arrested. Do you understand?
Are you kidding me?
And now he's putting her in a compliance grip.
Under what charges?
Okay, so
I have personal property.
Yeah, I know. She can go out there. Okay.
That was extremely forceful.
Yeah. So he did apply a compliance grip in which he bent her wrist in such a manner that the only way to ease the pressure is to allow the person holding you in the compliance grip to manipulate your arm.
Mm. Could that count as excessive force?
No, that does not count. Well, in this
Or
situation,
police brutality?
in this situation, given the fact that she was being removed for her speech that was completely lawful, yeah, it is excessive force.
Mm.
But herein lies the issue, and I'm bringing up the next video.
Not over that
So the video before Surprise Arizona, we talked about Phoenix PD.
Mm-hmm.
And now Phoenix is getting involved again. Take a listen to this.
Not over. That controversial rule is now off the books, but the woman that you saw in that clip is still taking this to court. Her lawyer says it's about holding the city, its mayor, and the arresting officer accountable.
Please cast your vote.
The Surprise City Council.
That's a unanimous yes vote, Mayor.
Voting to repeal a decades-long rule which banned complaints against city employees during public comment. It comes after the city was under fire for their response to a heated moment last month.
Do not touch me. Do not put your hands on me. Do not put your hands on me.
Come on now.
That's a police officer arresting activist Rebecca Massey and taking her out of the meeting, moments after Mayor Skip Hall cut her off.
There are oral communications during the city council meeting may not be used to lodge charges or complaints against any employee of the city.
You're violating my First Amendment rights.
Talking.
You are violating my First Amendment rights.
That's your opinion.
And it's the opinion of Massey's lawyer, Connor Fitzpatrick, with the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression.
It was an affront to the First Amendment, and the fact that it's been in place for as long as it has is unacceptable.
Fitzpatrick says revoking the rule is a good step by the city, but says what happened to Massey is unconstitutional.
It's good that fire is taking on her case.
Yes, it is. So here's the thing. They're going to go in front of a judge. Specifically the mayor is going to go in front of a judge and say, "Oh, well, I didn't know it was unconstitutional and we've repealed it." But you had noticed that it was unconstitutional for at least a decade before this happened. There is no reason why this should have been on the books after 2012, after the Ninth Circuit decision in Acosta v. City of Mesa, or Costa Mesa.
I'm curious why this was even a thought to begin with. Like, why was it on the books to begin with?
Because tyrants are going to tyrant.
True,
Yeah,
I know.
Basically.
I know, probably a stupid question for me to ask, but like me, my free speech absolutism, I'm just like, why would you ever think of such a thing?
Let's see here for a second. Maps. I want to see where Surprise Arizona is.
It's Maricopa County. It's near, so it's same county as Phoenix.
Okay.
It's always fucking Maricopa County, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you notice, they were also her initial complaint was also related to the, let's just say the election fortifying in Maricopa County. Relating to the freest and fairest election of all time. And you have to say for YouTube, so YouTube doesn't take us down.
Okay, so let's go back to the city. Herein lies the issue.
It's why their lawsuit against the city, mayor, and officer is not going away.
The Constitution only survives and thrives when people stand up when constitutional rights are threatened. And that's what's happened here.
The city of Surprise sent us a statement saying, in part, other Arizona cities have similar rules about public comment, and goes on to say that it will review its speaker rules to better protect the public's right to speak and the city's right to efficiently conduct its meetings.
If other cities have a similar rule, it's time for that rule to go.
Surprise police cited Massey with trespassing, which is a misdemeanor. However, due to a conflict of interest, the city of Phoenix is taking the reins on the prosecution, and Massey's arraignment is set for October 22nd. Reporting live in studio, Casey Torres, Arizona's Family.
So they have recused themselves for a conflict of interest and handed it over to the Phoenix District Attorney and the Phoenix judges, of which I have said I have no faith.
Yeah.
They're going to find her guilty. And now we will have a fight go up to the Supreme Court. This is going to be a long one, but this is going to be an important one. Keep your eyes on this.
Well, assuming that the Supreme Court takes it up, I mean, it's entirely possible the Ninth Circuit will find in her favor and the Supreme Court will just let it be.
It's possible, but I have a sneaking suspicion that whoever loses at the Ninth Circuit is going to try to take it to SCOTUS. Because, I mean, California, Washington, Hawaii, pretty much all states in the Ninth Circuit have this underlying need to continue to take shit to SCOTUS in order to try to continually enforce their tyranny, and it's just not gonna work anymore.
Yeah. I think at this point they're just they have some weird masochistic need to just be smacked down by SCOTUS time after time again.
Okay, and speaking of SCOTUS, this is where the SCOTUS Appeals of tonight's topic comes in. Oral arguments for Garland, Attorney General v. Vanderstock. In this case, it's Vanderstock v. Garland, because Vanderstock is the one that actually brought the appeal to SCOTUS, I believe.
Is that how they?
Oh wait, no.
Is that how they name it, or the naming convention goes?
No, it's whoever appealed it to SCOTUS is the one in first. So the DOJ in fact did bring this as on appeal to SCOTUS. Sorry about that. And we're not going to go through the entire thing.
We will hear argument first this morning in case 23-2 Garland versus Vanderstock. General Prelogger.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the Court, the Gun Control Act imposes straightforward but essential requirements. Firearm sellers and manufacturers must mark their products with serial numbers, maintain sales records, and conduct background checks. The industry has followed those conditions without difficulty for more than half a century, and those basic requirements are crucial to solving gun crimes and keeping guns out of the hands of minors, felons, and domestic abusers. But in recent years, companies like the respondents here have tried to circumvent those requirements. They've begun selling firearms as easy-to-assemble kits and frames and receivers that require minimal work to be made functional. They've advertised the products, in their words, as ridiculously easy to assemble and dummy-proof, and touted that you can go from opening the mail to have a fully functional gun in as little as 15 minutes. No serial number, background check, or records required. Those untraceable guns are attractive to people who can't lawfully purchase them or who plan to use them in crimes. As a result, our nation has seen an explosion in crimes committed with ghost guns.
She is conflating these two issues. So, out of all of the recovered firearms in these crimes,
So where can I get one of these kits?
I don't know, because Polymer 80 is no longer in business.
Oh,
That's a shame.
But when it comes to these firearms, so 3D printed guns, easy to quote unquote easy to assemble guns, these firearms are found so minutely within the group of quote unquote ghost guns that it's a negligible percentage out of all of the quote unquote ghost guns recovered in crimes. 4 of the last statistic that I saw, so 4 of all crime guns were 3D printed or kits. 4. All of the rest of the recovered quote unquote ghost guns had their serial numbers filed off.
How hard is it to file off a serial number?
Depends on the firearm. Can be very easy.
Number, is it made of metal, or is it, what is it?
It's made of metal. It depends on what kind of gun you have. So a Glock, I find, would probably be fairly difficult to file off because you have to contend with the plastic on the lower receiver of the firearm that the piece of metal is recessed within. For something like an AR, fairly easy to file off a serial number of that.
In the face of that public safety crisis, ATF promulgated this rule to underscore 2 points about the Gun Control Act's plain text. First, a weapon parts kit that can readily be converted to function as a gun with common tools, often in under an hour, is a covered firearm. Second, a product is a frame or receiver under the Act, even if the buyer must drill a few holes or remove a few superfluous pieces of plastic to make it functional. Both of those points are consistent with how ATF has interpreted and implemented the Act across 5 decades and 11 different presidential administrations. Respondents now seek a sea change in the Act scope. They claim that if a firearm isn't 100% functional, if it's missing just one hole that could be drilled in seconds and immediately assembled into a working gun, that product can be sold to anyone online with no background check, no records, and no serial number. That contradicts the Act's plain text, and it also contradicts common sense. This court should make clear that the Act regulates these products as what they are: firearms and frames and receivers of firearms. I welcome the court's questions.
Does this new regulation cover all of Chapter 44?
Yes. So I think that the understanding of a firearm reflected in the final rule does reflect the 922A13 definition.
Would it also apply under 924?
Yes, and so I think that also incorporates, though, Justice Thomas, the mens rea requirements that are under 924, which I think guards against some of the concerns that respondents have raised in this case, that manufacturers could unintentionally be swept up by these restrictions. For example, 924A1D requires a showing of willfulness with respect to selling products without a serial number or without a license.
You make a lot of the fact that this has been regulated for a half a century, but it wasn't regulated in this way for a half century. What was the original reg, the previous reg?
The previous reg defined a frame or receiver with respect to particular components that were housed in that primary structure. But Justice Thomas, I agree that this rule reflects any fundamental change in approach, because under that prior reg, ATF consistently recognized that even when that frame or receiver, the primary structural component, wasn't yet fully finished or complete, still it would qualify as a firearm looking at the same factors that are listed in the rule. Things like how much time is it going to take to make it.
Yes. That's where the 80% rule came into effect. If you have to do 20% of the work, it's not a firearm.
Correct.
Functional? Do you need special equipment? Do you need to buy parts, and are they readily available? Do you need special skill? So all along, from 1968 on, the agency has consistently focused on this same issue of how quickly you can make that frame or receiver operational as part of a working gun. And the only change in the rule, and I want to openly acknowledge this as the rule does, is that ATF is now taking account of jigs or templates, which are a form of tool that quickly speed up the process of making a frame or receiver functional, because they show you exactly where you have to drill in that weapon. So there's
No. That's not how jigs work. Jigs are for accuracy. They are not to speed things up. Putting a jig on an 80% lower doesn't make it so that my drill goes through an AR-15 pocket faster. That's not how that works, you dumb idiot.
no trial and error or guesswork. But as ATF explained in the final rule, that wasn't a change in statutory interpretation. It was just a recognition that jigs serve precisely the same function as something like indexing, stamping the frame or receiver to show you where you have to drill. So it goes directly to the question that the agency has asked all along, namely, how quickly, easily, and efficiently can this process be completed?
Yeah, General, I'm looking at agency letters stretching back as far back as 1978, and each of them basically use the same language that the current regulation is using. The agency letter in 78 said it evaluated an item on whether it had reached a stage of manufacture such that it might be readily converted to functional condition. Correct? That's what you're talking about?
Exactly right. And I think that refutes respondent's suggestion here that ATF had somehow been applying a different standard over the 50-year history of the Gun Control Act. Instead, ATF has always looked at whether the item has reached a critical stage of manufacture by reference to what work remains to be done to make it functional. So it's not like these are entirely separate and distinct contexts. As the 1978 classification letter you referenced makes clear, the only way to measure whether something has reached a critical stage of manufacture is to look at how close it is to the final product and what steps you need to take to turn that into a functional frame or receiver.
General, I want to know what our standard of review here is, because I can imagine a frame or receiver that is just a block of metal that's not readily convertible. I can also imagine some part kits that require such tremendous amount of work that it doesn't qualify as readily convertible. So if I can point to one item that wouldn't qualify, could be swept up potentially by the new regulation, is that enough to defeat a facial challenge? Is it enough? Or is that always an as-applied challenge?
That is definitely not enough to defeat a facial challenge. So there is no particular product before the court in this case. Respondents have chosen to sue in this facial pre-enforcement posture. And what that means is that the only question the court should be asking in this case is whether there is anything on the face of the rule that is contradicted by the statutory text. In other words, whether the standards that ATF set forth in the rule are themselves contradicted by the statute and therefore foreclosed by the statute. And they can't make that showing here. It's certainly true that they try to suggest, and your question touches on the idea that they're...
Okay, so as I had said before, this is a challenge on the APA, not on the Second Amendment. And Justice Sotomayor does bring up a very good point, is that the letters that they've been talking about have used pretty much the same language ever since 1978. The problem is that they didn't change definitions until 2020 ever, or 2021. We've had all of these weapons, specifically the AR, for decades. And now they want to change the rule? No, doesn't work.
There might be particular marginal products out there that could test the bounds of whether something is readily convertible, but the court doesn't need to consider those kinds of products in this case because that can all be adjudicated on an as-applied basis going forward.
You use our statement in INS versus NCIR, which basically tracks what you're just saying. But in Reno versus Flores, we used a different standard and said that a respondent to prevail must establish that no set of circumstances exists under which the regulation would be valid. You didn't go that route.
That would be an even more stringent standard, and I think
agree.
a burden that respondents can't surmount. But we think even under the INS standard that we cite in our brief, it's very clear that there's nothing on the face of the Gun Control Act that
How
prohibits
about the
this
Washington
approach to
State
regulation.
range standard, which says even if there might be some applications that are intermissible, those possible applications cannot render the rule facially invalid so long as the rule has a, quote, plainly legitimate sweep?
Yes, and I think that that standard is equally satisfied as well here. You pointed to the hypothetical possibility of marginal cases where a product would take a lot of time to put together, but I want to emphasize the core of the conduct that this act regulates, which were the ghost gun kits and partially complete frames or receivers that were flooding the market leading up to promulgation of this rule. Those are issues.
And therein lies the problem. These kits were already deemed lawful. They were all 80% lowers. Courts have already ruled 80% lowers, or like I said before, anything higher than 80% finished is readily convertible. Just because you only have to drill a couple holes in a plastic frame doesn't make it more than 90% complete. Or more than 80% complete. It just makes it so that, hey, this is an easy weapon to produce in the first place. If you have the parts, if you have the tools, yes, it could take as little as 15 minutes. But an AR-15, 80% lower? I don't think so. That is not readily convertible. That's gonna... I've put together lowers that are stripped, and that in and of itself takes me at least 3 hours. I suppose a skilled gunsmith could do it in 30 minutes. But we're talking about a stripped lower. We're talking about a quote-unquote readily convertible firearm. It's already serialized, blah, blah. A lower, an 80% lower receiver for an AR, you've got to drill out part of the pocket, you've got to drill out a couple holes, which means you've got to have the equipment to drill through either cast aluminum or milled aluminum. And if it's milled aluminum, it's even harder, so you have to have more specialized drills or more specialized drill bits. I'm telling you, no criminal or very few criminals are going out onto the web and buying at $700 a lower receiver that they're going to have to drill themselves when they can just go onto the black market and buy a stolen gun with a a filed off serial number for $80 or $100. I mean, do you really think that they're gonna take the time?
Probably not. Criminals tend to have a rather high time preference. Doesn't one of the reasons why they're criminals. They don't like expending effort on things.
Let's see. No.
Especially violent, petty street criminals.
Okay, so I think this is around the point that Alito comes in.
In the kit? Yes, and I think that presses on the more apt analogy here, which is that we are not suggesting that scattered components that might have some entirely separate and distinct function could be aggregated and called a weapon in the absence of this kind of evidence that is their intended purpose and function. But if you bought, from Trader Joe's some omelet-making kit that had all of the ingredients to make the omelet and maybe included whatever you would need to start the fire in order to cook the omelet and had all of that objective indication that that's what's being marketed and sold, we would recognize that for what it is. And it doesn't stretch plain English to say, I bought omelets at the store if you bought all of the ingredients that were intended and designed to make them, especially under statutory language that refers to something like breakfast foods or things that can be readily converted to make breakfast.
Can I ask you about the difference between the destructive device and machine gun definitions that also reference parts in a way that this definition does not? I've just been thinking about, in 1968, in the Gun Control Act, why Congress might have done that differently. And these ghost guns weren't around. These kits are a more recent problem, which doesn't mean that the plain language doesn't cover the unintended consequence. But in 1968, and I don't know enough about the gun industry to know if this is right, which is why I want your take on this, wasn't it the case then, I think, that destructive devices like grenades or even machine guns were not things that you tended to buy whole because they were so heavily regulated and even illegal to purchase that way as opposed to firearms? So they were generally purchased as components or things that were able to be converted or made. Like, it would make sense to think about it in terms of parts.
Barrett, shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. Stop asking the ATF about this shit, because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about either.
Am I thinking about that correctly based on the industry at the time?
Yes, you're exactly right about that relevant difference and how people were ordinarily constructing things like destructive devices that weren't sold in these types of kits. And I think the important thing to recognize, and what this question presses on, is that Congress can use a variety of verbal formulations to cover similar types of conduct. Each of these other definitions that respondents have pointed to that refer explicitly to parts were enacted at different times from the relevant definition of a firearm, and they address different issues in the way that your question touched on. But what respondents are doing is ignoring the language of the statute that Congress did use in 1968, and it expressly referred to things that can be readily converted to function to expel a projectile through the action of an explosive. It's hard for me to see how a weapon parts kit doesn't fit within that plain language, because quite literally, the kit is intended and designed to produce that functioning weapon in a very short amount of time by people who don't know anything about guns and can do it with relatively little skill.
Okay, we're gonna get through Justice Gorsuch, and then we're gonna take off for the night. We're gonna go overtime.
Well, I understand your argument under A with respect to things that can be readily converted, but there's also the argument under B, frame or receiver, which doesn't include that kind of language that might bring in artifact nouns more obviously. What's your thought about that?
So I do think there's language in B that gets us there, and it's the fact that Congress referred to frame or receiver but didn't expressly define that term. It's true that in subparagraph A, Congress used the exact language readily converted, but that's because that's Congress's definition of the term, and if it had defined it solely in terms of the functionality of a gun, if it had just said something that functions as a gun, that would be limited to operational weapons. So Congress had a really good reason to use the language there.
Gotcha. I follow all of that.
So then
now moving on to B, though.
So moving moving on to B, Congress didn't define the term, which means it carries its plain and ordinary meaning. And we think that the ordinary meaning of a noun like frame or receiver includes objects that are nearly complete but are missing just a few holes that need to be drilled.
Now, we can't possibly think that every noun that Congress uses everywhere in the U.S. Code is used as an artifact noun that carries with it things like Justice Alito's pen and pencil as a grocery list, right? So there's got to be a line that makes this, on your theory of the case, why we should read that into B here, but not everywhere in the U.S. Code. What are your thoughts?
Right. So I want to be very clear that we think that this is a matter of ordinary meaning, that you don't need it to be 100% complete. And that I think that runs across the board. If I mentioned a bicycle, but it was missing pedals, as we explain in our brief, you would still recognize that for what it is as a bicycle. That's the first order question. But then the second question arises that you touched on.
If I'm not inclined to think that every noun is used in that way in the U.S. Code, I mean, that would be a very dramatic argument, right? Lenity, notice, fair notice to people that every piece of paper and pen is a grocery list. You're on notice of that. But is there something particular to this statute that you think would a more narrow approach?
Yes, we think the context and purpose of the statute strongly support understanding the term in this way. And the reason for that is because throughout the federal firearms laws, whenever Congress has itself expressly provided a definition, it has included not only the fully complete and functional item, but things that are the item and can readily be made to function that way. So I think that's Congress's own indication in this statute that it's trying to ensure coverage not only of things that have the functionality of a frame or receiver at the moment they're sold, but frames or receivers that can be readily converted to function with minimal steps.
If you have something textual, I'd love for you to point me to that and also address your friends on the other side. I'm sure going to make something of this, that as recently as 2021 in a brief filed in the Southern District of New York, the government represented that an unfinished frame or receiver does not meet the statutory definition of firearm.
Sure, so let me take those in.
Bam. That's where we're gonna leave off with Gorsuch for the night. And we'll come back to this next week, but the simple fact of the matter is, yeah, the government did represent that an unfinished frame or receiver does not meet the statutory definition of a firearm.
Yep.
The problem with government is they can't stop stepping on their own fucking feet.
Well, the problem with the government is that they're evil and retarded.
Well, that too. Let's see here. Okay, so there's been no chats, nothing of that sort. So we are going to go ahead and... Ow! I love having burns on my body.
How bad are they? Are you okay?
Second-degree burns.
Maybe you should get that checked out.
Yeah, I've already applied medical.
Okay, good, awesome.
Don't forget, I am trained in life-saving, that sort of shit. So first aid, I have that stuff in my house.
Doctor feel good over here?
You are trained in both life-saving and life-ending tactics.
Well, yeah, that's kind of how things go in the military. We have to save lives and we have to take them. Holy shit, where did Kick go?
Probably got internet issues. I know she also briefly left one other time and then came back.
Yeah.
Oh, there she is.
Oh, okay. You okay there?
What the hell happened? I was kicked out randomly.
You may have some connection issues, but with all of that
was strange.
With all of that, knowing that I have been trained in both saving lives and taking them, we are going to go ahead and say our good nights and our adieus, we will go ahead and start with our resident goth anarchist. Please say good night, Miss Keck.
Well, it's been awesome. Government gay and the Fed. I do not like police. I am not a fan of authority for the most part. But yeah, it was fun. If you don't like this episode, then you're gay and I hate you.
We normally save that for after I mute you guys. And then we will go to...
You're welcome.
we are going to go ahead and say goodnight with Stoner, our friend from the South. Please say goodnight, Stoner. If you can. You are currently muted.
He said in chat, goodnight and government sucks.
Okay. Perfect. And then, of course, our dirty Frenchy Frenchman, our disgusting Kanukistani from the Soviet state of Kanukistan. Please say goodnight, Dale.
Good night, everyone. Hope to see you next time. And as always, I bid you adieu, au revoir.
And with that said, we are going to leave out with our song, and we will see you all, maybe, next week. Please have a good night.
you